Let's go!
So, this is pretty huge news, dude. EVO has revealed the registration numbers for 2024. I think we should just talk about it because, to me, this is a big tell of how our event is going to be structured at EVO when we go to the event, and I'm going to be streaming from it, you know, and I'm going to be insanely busy, but we're going to be covering all of these games and watching all the side tournaments and all that kind of stuff, right? So this is important. There's a lot to talk about here because there is more people registered for this tournament than I think any esports event in history. I think they beat it, right? It was over 10,000 total registrations across all games. So when it comes to the amount of people that are going to be attending, but not even just attending, but also competing at said event, it's the biggest in human history type shit. So that's pretty huge, man. And just to talk a bit about this stuff, because there's a lot of people chatting about like MK1 and all that kind of shit, but you know, let's just get to it. So Street Fighter 6 being the #1 game makes a lot of sense. This is the second EVO for the game, right? The second EVO. It is eclipsing the numbers of other games that are relatively newer, like Tekken 8. And even Tekken 8, I thought Tekken 8 would beat Street Fighter 6 this year, but I think this is just, once again, another testament to the staying power of SF6 as a game. And not just on a local level, just from the Americas, but also an international level. People love Street Fighter 6 across the board, dude. If people try to convince you that that game is not beloved or liked, they are just talking out their ass, and you should not listen to anything else they have to say. The game is very well received as of right now, so it's really crazy, man. Tekken 8 being the second highest is no surprise. T8 has been, I think, performing relatively well in the competitive space as of late. I didn't get to see the entirety of CEO, but it had a pretty exciting finality to the entire event. The absolute defining best characters in every single way aren't entirely defined. I know Dragunov is still super good, but to be real, Tekken 8 did something really good with how they approached its competitive mindset. And it won't resonate with most Tekken players because they're still coming from a perspective of Tekken 7, but they wanted chaos. They wanted Tekken to be less controlled. Of course, competitive players are all about control. They want things to be controlled. They want to be able to control situations. They want to be able to mitigate risks, all this kind of stuff. But Tekken 8 wants to throw a wrench into that. And it was clear from the very beginning of its mechanics that they want to do some crazy stuff. And now they're reeling back on the crazy stuff, you know, allowing some of those heat smashes and stuff to be sidesteppable. And a lot of other big changes. But to me, like, Tekken 8 competitively has been super fun to watch. Has actually performed crazy well in the spots that it's needed to over the past few months. So the other crazy story here is that Guilty Gear Strive is still #3. It's still over 2,000 entrants. Guilty Gear Strive, as much as there might not be like a huge amount of player count online or whatever things are going to try to spin about Guilty Gear, whether or not you like it or not, I get it. Bro, like, the amount of folks that are still consistently showing up year over year over year over year for Guilty Gear Strive is crazy. The game is effectively old now, right? It's like 3+ years old now. That's crazy that it still is performing at that level and remaining up here in a way that is strong. And in most places where it's like big events, like even EVO Japan, is still held pretty strong. I'm excited, you know? I think it's incredibly cool that Strive is still going. We'll see who the top names still are going to be staying there because of CEO. There was some pretty crazy rivalry stuff going down. It was cool. Feels like it came out last year. I agree, man. Strive came out in 2021. I was playing that bitch-ass game in 2019 pre-pandemic at the Arc System World Tour in 2019. It is fucking crazy, dude. That was the moment where 2019 Arc World Tour, when we were first playing Strive, and we were kind of like, it feels kind of Street Fighter 5-ish. We were not wrong. When we were talking to the devs, that was the opportunity I had to get direct contact with American localization teams as well as, American publicity teams for Arc System Works to relay information. And we started screaming rollback netcode to them. We started screaming constantly. I actually went to Arc System Works headquarters several weeks after that event to just play test the game and get footage of it more because Guilty Gear was not popular, dude. This is pre-Strive, so this was like, they just want anybody to give a shit about Guilty Gear in any way at all. So yeah, I made a ton of videos showing the super early builds, even pre-beta builds of Guilty Gear Strive. And at that point, we were constantly screaming at them, bro, rollback netcode. it needs it. They're like, what is the one thing we can do to this game that will make it better? I'm like, roll back netcode. It needs to not be terrible online. I had to remind them, I cannot play Guilty Gear Xrd online, dude. It's a nightmare. That's crazy to think that that game in that state from 5 fucking years ago is still getting 2,000 plus entrants. Bro, that's wild to me. That's wild to me. And now Guilty Gear is like a mainstay game. It's so cool. It's so freaking cool. GBVSR is a new game. It might not feel like it, but it is a new game. It came out in December of last year. We played the shit out of it when it came out. I had a great goddamn time. Other stuff happened, and many other games came out, so it didn't keep my interest forever. But this is the first big EVO outside of EVO Japan for Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. And I think Siegfried did pretty good at EVO Japan. Still probably one of the better characters in the whole goddamn game. So we'll see. There's been a lot of changes and additions and crazy stuff that has gone down like even since then. So to be real, there's a lot of shit that could make that tournament pretty interesting to watch. You know, I'm down to watch that when it does eventually happen. And I think that will be a finals day game, right? I'm 99% sure Grand Blue is going to have a spot on finals day because they get 4 games, top 6, sorry. It's the morning game of finals day. So I'll do my best to get up and streaming on that day as quickly as possible so we can at least get the, you know, all that kind of stuff. Third Strike almost made it, dude. Third Strike actually almost made it to finals day? Holy shit. And I think this goes on to be not the biggest Third Strike tournament ever. I think Co-op Cup and stuff might beat that, but Third Strike singles tournament, it's the biggest Third Strike singles tournament of all time. I have to remind you that the first Third Strike tournament I went to at EVO was in 2007. And in 2007, the amount of people that showed up for that Third Strike tournament was unfathomable. Unfathomable, untasticable. We could not believe it. We have made it. We've gone mainstream. We're going to be on the cover of the New York Times and shit. Bro, we did it. 300 people entered Third Strike. We are gods. Third Strike will rule the world one day. We said in 2007, we are gods. That's like weeklies now for a lot of these games. But still, you know, for that many people, for that old of a game, it's amazing. Third Strike being the throwback game was a great call from Rick. And when I first started hearing that 3S was going to be that game, the debate of whether Third Strike would be the next game, I was just kind of like, you'll never be able to do that. The hardware requirement, there's no universal version of the game. You can't run it on emulation. It's impossible, dude. All the same things we had been echoing for years. And dude, Evo staff and Rick just brute forced this shit. Like, they have so many super guns and arcade boards ready to rock that they have to. They had to get a shit ton of hardware exclusively for Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. It is crazy, dude. The amount of hardware coordination going down just to make this event happen for 1,100 people to play Third Strike, you know, to complete those tournaments in the span of 2 days. That will be one of the bigger finals games on Saturday night. Holy shit, man. Undernight being in here, getting almost like 800 folks is great. I'm not a big Undernight guy, but still, you know, the fact that it's here. I almost wonder that if a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ remained in the EVO lineup in some way, if it managed to stay in here in some way, because it was kind of like up in the air. I don't even know if Dragon Ball FighterZ would even eclipse Undernight's numbers. I don't know. If the game had not gotten any balance patches or anything, any of the changes that it did, I do not know if it would have beaten like 800 entrants. So still, I think Undernight being here is great because this is severely like I wouldn't say underappreciated game. It's very appreciated. This game is niche. And that's the whole point of it, is that Undernight sort of represents in the same way that like a lot of these unique anime fighters do. Original anime fighters. I can't just say anime fighters by like French bread and stuff like that. They have a special spot at EVO because they always like have their super hardcore community and they show up, you know? So it's great. Let's get to the obvious part of this entire conversation, which is fucking wild. Mortal Kombat 1's first EVO. Granted, it's been out for 9 months, getting close to its 1-year anniversary. This is the first EVO for Mortal Kombat 1. And yes, it is not performing. And to be real, Mortal Kombat numbers in general, historically, going back to Injustice, MK11, MKX, yada, 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 when they do show up at EVO, they're good, but do they usually hold a candle to like the Tekkens and the Street Fighters and the Capcom fighting games? Not really for the most part. To be completely honest, like Mortal Kombat's competitive community, the ones that show up to events and, you know, really fill out the brackets and shit, are never massive. And they usually get a big spike in the first year, and then it severely goes down for the years following. The weird part is that MK1 feels like this is like a 2-year later tournament. There's a lot of like push come to shove and a lot of people on Twitter over the past 24 hours wondering and asking why. What's happening? What's going on? Why are the numbers so low? This is the first year for an EVO game. People love tweeting about this shit. And we talked about it a bit a while ago with what's going on with Mortal Kombat 1, just overall. And the game's in a much better state now. I mean, don't get me wrong. More characters, things are getting fleshed and figured out. And I still enjoy playing it for the most part. I'm still waiting on my character, which is about to happen soon. But I can tell you why. As somebody that has been on the outside and seen Mortal Kombat perform at its best and its worst in the past, and now arguably it's not in a specific great state. I mean, I can tell you why. And it's because Mortal Kombat 1 lost its casual audience. You would say, but Max, how does that make any sense? Lost its overarching casual audience. How does that make any sense? Because casual players do not show up for big competitive events. My question to you is, are you blind? That is absolutely not the case. The whole point of the inflation of year one fighting games at events like EVO and tournaments and stuff is literally the influx of casual players. The whole point of a brand new fighting game coming out and the competitive relationship with it, with the competitive community, is that you are going to effectively lose a substantial portion of the players that were really good and into the previous game. Those players are either going to adopt the new game and move directly forward, or they are just not, right? And they're going to despise the new game and like the old game, yada, yada, yada. Casual players will pick up the new game because previous game, cool, let's check out this new game. I really like this game, let's get better at it. So you are now replacing and inflating the amount of players that want to competitively play your game. What happened to Mortal Kombat 1 though? MK1 ran into a problem very early on where its casual player base is missing from that inflation. Now it feels like the amount of people that are populating MK1 at an event like EVO are effectively the old MK hardcores, because these are now reflecting old MK hardcore kind of numbers. At the end of MK11, all that kind of stuff. What they're missing out on is the fact that MK1 didn't exactly resonate casually with the audience as much as previous NRS games. And what do NRS games have compared to all these other games? Arguably the biggest casual market of any of them. By like a lot. By an absolute shit ton. We all know that MK1 sold really good at the start, but to be honest, we have not gotten any updates since, and we do not know how many people have stuck around, but it's clear that without some kind of year one inflation, which is odd, it is pretty obvious that not everybody is just sticking with it. Not many people are super, and we came to a conclusion about this in a previous video. Casual players hate the cameo system. They hate it. The reason behind that is the same reason why casual players hated the 2v2 mode in Mortal Kombat 9. Mortal Kombat players and the casual audience associated with it has been acclimated to a certain kind of game style for the entirety of its fucking existence. And that has been a 1v1 sort of experience. And when it's not that, that is usually despised, and they don't like it, and they don't resonate towards it, and they think it's a weird gimmick and they dislike it, you know? And that's just one issue that MK1 has. Granted, if you listen to the majority of people that, you know, play Mortal Kombat games for the gameplay part of it to a lot of the competitive community kind of like it. Like, for the most part, most people that were missing gameplay elements from MK11 are sort of happy with the way MK1 offers enough spice and intrigue in its gameplay styles to make it at least somewhat interesting to play. And I agree with them. I actually completely agree. This is the most fun when I play MK1, the most fun I've had with any NRS game gameplay-wise since Mortal Kombat X. What I'm trying to say is casual numbers, even when it comes to hardcore competitive communities, are mega important. Guilty Gear Strive had much bigger numbers when it first came out, and it eventually stood over 2,000 players. But the fact that a game like Guilty Gear Strive, which sold who knows how much, like 1/5 of what a game like Mortal Kombat would sell, but have this much representation, the only reason that is because the game severely resonated with a large part of a casual audience that expanded and pushed the amount of players that would not be super hardcores to being eventual hardcores. And now we're getting a balance where there's like, yeah, it looks like there's at least a couple of thousand of people that are willing to go to an event and play Guilty Gear at a hardcore level. King of Fighters 15 being on here and being relatively low is slightly disappointing, I would say, but also not really surprising. And there's a trend here. There's a similar trend between Mortal Kombat and King of Fighters. The reason being is that the amount of audience that is buying these SNK games or has bought the previous SNK games and gotten into them and played them hardcore obviously has its hardcore audience, right? But SNK has been doing something super similar that NetherRealm did for the past decade until MK1, which took 4 years to come out. Like every 2 to 3 years, we get a brand new SNK game. And we're right now on the edge of this SNK game being effectively sunsetted, even though it's getting like a big update in the near future. Who knows what's going to be in that update? We are now getting a brand new Gauro game that everyone's super excited about and everyone's really into. And gameplay wise is not that much different than like KOF 15. It is different, mind you. It's like a 3v3, 1v1. But still, for the most part, I think a lot of the audience of SNK, like hardcores, are not having to remain super loyal to that one thing anymore, or like the Sam Show audience or any of that kind of stuff, because they don't really get shared. They're getting new games all the time. And ever since like KOF 14, it's kind of been the case where KOF 14 comes out, and then soon after you get SNK Heroines or whatever the hell that game was called, and then Samurai Showdown comes out, and then KOF 15 comes out, and it's like, dude, holy crap. And then we're getting re-releases of KOF 13 and all these other games, so it's like, dude, they're cooking. But to me, it feels like the audience, like the big hardcore SNK audience, is sort of getting acclimated to the fact that we're getting new games constantly. Similar to MK, the first year, the first like spike of game interest is definitely there, 100%. And a lot of people show up and the numbers are great. But over time, now we just know. We've known there's a new Gauro on the horizon for like 2 years, dude. And now we're starting to see like the numbers whittle out of the people that are going to stick with KOF 15 for a long period of time. And it was also pretty clear that KOF 14, as much as a good game that it ended up being, did not really keep its audience. It didn't. All I'm trying to say is that KOF 15 being at these numbers doesn't really seem that weird to me. Not really. Just because we're on the sunset of this game, even though it's being updated, and we're going to be getting a new game very soon. A new SNK game that the entire SNK audience is going to be excited about, and probably will have a big resurgence. I think Gauro is going to have a resurgence on the same levels of like Samurai Showdown. I think it's going to do pretty well. A lot of interesting stories on here, right? A lot of interesting tales about each game and where they're at. I definitely am like the least familiar with Under Night and Grand Blue, obviously, but where Strive is and how high it is up here with Third Strike and MK1, KOF, and Street Fighter and Tekken, there's a lot of really cool stuff. And Chipotle. The cool part is that these aren't the only games. EVO has its prize games, I get you, but bro, there is a ton of like officially supported side tournaments with shit like Soul Calibur 6 and Ultimate Marble 3 and Killer Instinct and all of that shit that will be part of our viewing experience at EVO this year. And even unofficial stuff that'll be going down at the event all over the place. So it's going to be awesome. There's going to be a lot of stuff to watch this year.